Welcome to Impact Sales Live. I'm your host, Joe Beck, founder of The Sales Activist and host of the Impact Sales podcast. Impact Sales Live was created to shine a spotlight on the best practices and tips that will help you stand out from the crowd in regard to sales. Whether you are an entrepreneur, a coach, a consultant, or a sales professional selling for a company, you'll get a lot of value from Impact Sales Live. And we have a great special episode in store for you today. Today, we're going to unpack the $200 million power close. So let's dive right in. Here we go. Okay, the $200 million power close. I like to kick things off by just covering a couple of things. Who is this particular live for? Well, it's for coaches, consultants, entrepreneurs, and sales professionals. Anybody who's out there trying to differentiate themselves in a selling environment is going to get a lot out of today's Impact Sales Live. So let me just go real quick through my bio, just so you know a little bit about who I am and what qualifies me to be going over this information with you. So for over 34 years, I've been working primarily in area of sales and business development. I've personally produced over $400 million in sales transaction volume for companies that I've worked with and for. In fact, more than half of the transactions that I've generated have been created as a result of what I'm going to go over today during Impact Sales Live. I've led sales teams as large as 200 individual team members, and across my career, I've personally coached, trained, and mentored over 3,500 sales professionals and entrepreneurs. But enough about me. Let's dive right into what we're here to talk about today. Before we do that, we want to make sure we cover and explain what I call the three elements of success. There are three basic key elements to massive success in sales, business, and in life. And those three categories are this. The first is your mindset, how you think, how you look at things, how you wrap your head around what's going on around you and what you're doing. Your mindset plays a major role in your success. Your network, the people that you associate with, the relationships that you establish, the people that you work with, work for, interact with, and whoever's relationship that you may potentially tap into to help your business move forward is really your network. And it's another important piece or another important key element of success. And then the final element are the systems that you deploy, the things that you do. What you do and how you do them play a major role in your success. And today, what we're going to cover with the $200 million power close falls right into the category of systems, something that you are specifically doing, what you're doing, and exactly what it can do to benefit you. So let's start talking about what exactly that is. The $200 million power close. Now, before I get into the specifics, one of the things that I think I need to spend a couple of minutes talking about is what I call my disclaimer related to this. See, I'm not personally a big fan of closing techniques. I'm not a fan of having a particular tactic or strategy related to closing. Personally, I believe that closing a sale or closing a transaction is something that should happen organically as part of the normal flow or process of the sales interaction. So when I use the word technique, it's more so to relate to the specific element of this close that we're going to be going over to today. But I want to make sure that I was clear about this. I'm not a fan of individual specific closing techniques. When somebody asks me about closing techniques, I'll say, yes, I use them, but more, honestly, the answer is I prefer not to. I prefer the organic flow of the interaction to kind of lead us in the direction of a successful outcome. And that may look different from one transaction to the next, but there are certain key elements that must be built into that. And a large part of those key elements is what I'm going to be going over through today, or go through today during this Impact Sales Live, going through and digging into one of these key communication tactics that I think really separates the average from the elite performer, something that, not everybody does the same way that I'm going to describe today. But the people that do it or use it really are different in the way that they communicate and interact with people. I call it my $200 million power close because, as I said, it's been responsible for probably more than half of the sales transactions that I've generated across my 34-year career. Really, over the last 20 years, it's made up the majority of how I would handle most interactions. And I think you're going to understand as I go through this information today how powerful it is and why it makes such a difference, because it aligns very, very well with the average person, the type of person that's going to be out there selling, and exactly how they look at things. So that's my disclaimer. I'm not a big fan of closing techniques or tactics. I am a more, believer in organic development and organic communication, and that's going to be what we're going to be highlighting today during this Impact Sales Live. So whether you knew it or not, there's an extremely powerful way of positioning sales to close right from the early stages of a sales interaction. Now, I know sometimes people think the close is actually the tail end when they actually are asked to take action or decide or make a buying decision. But believe it or not, the close actually starts at the very beginning of the sales interaction. And if you're smart, you're recognizing that early in your sales career, or maybe you're a little farther down the road in your sales career, and you're now realizing that, I'm really closing a lot earlier than I thought I was. It's not waiting for a particular end of the interaction for the close to occur. Now, I'm not saying that you're aggressively closing, kind of like Alec Baldwin from Glengarry Glen Ross, always be closing. I'm not advocating that. I'm saying that you're laying the foundation, you're preparing, you're subtly aligning with the close at the very beginning of the process. And sometimes people miss this opportunity. They miss the opportunity to start the interaction the right way, setting the tone, not only setting the tone, but preparing for what's to come later on. See, the path that you'd like to take, the direction that you'd like to go, and you certainly know the outcome that you'd like to generate. So it only stands to reason that you would start the right way, on the right foot, to really increase your odds for success. And today we're going to talk about that, because that's the starting point for the $200 million power close. Now, this particular approach, this technique that I've used, the $200 million power close, I actually call it something else. We'll be hearing what I call it later on. I've been doing this for over 20 years, and it's literally helped me generate more than half of the transactions that I've generated in my career, and counting. Most interactions that I get into when it's a selling environment, when talking to people, I use a version of this communication pattern. I use a specific type or version of this in just about every sales interaction that I currently use or do. And the reason is not only because it's so powerful, it's because it aligns very closely to the person I am. It's a natural communication thing for me to be able to include in the way that I communicate with people. And I'm hoping that at the end of this live session that you're going to feel that way too, because I believe this is one of the easiest ways for the average person to be successful in closing sales. I think it takes a lot of pressure off of somebody. I think it makes somebody feel more at ease in just selling in general. So if you're one of those people that is nervous about selling or struggles with nerves during selling, I'm promising you, if you stick with me today, stick through to the end, and you hear the entire process, you're going to feel better about it. You're going to have something that's actionable that you can take and use that will align with you personally, because it's very easy to build into your communication pattern what we're going to go over today. So bear with me. It's going to take a couple of minutes to get through this, but I promise you it's going to be worth it in the end. You don't want to miss what's going on here in this Impact Sales Live. So let's start by just explaining that this technique, this communication pattern, actually requires multiple steps. This is part of a comprehensive process. It's an easy process. It flows naturally. It's very organic, but it is a process. And certainly in less than an hour, I can't describe this entire process to you and give you every single little nuance that you would need, but I can give you the basics. I can explain to you exactly what it is, why it's so powerful, why it works, and most importantly, why you want to try deploying this, because I believe this is the direction that you want to be going towards if you really want to create massive sales momentum for yourself. I believe this particular closing approach, this particular tactic is one of the strongest ways that you can engage somebody in a selling environment. So, the first step in this multi-step process, this comprehensive process, is you have to start your interaction with what I call a powerful strategic opening statement. Okay, a powerful strategic opening statement. Having a powerful opening statement, setting the tone, the stage, setting the landscape for what's to come is a very important and critical first step. But I don't want you to overlook the word strategic in this sentence. A powerful strategic opening statement. See, this opening statement is not only powerful and not only resonates well and it's clear, but it actually there's strategy tied to it. There's a reason why we're doing it. We're going to be digging into a little bit of psychology today. We're going to be peeling back the importance of certain words, but it's strategic in its use. And it's really important that you start your sales interactions with an approach like this. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to have to do it word for word the way that I'm going to describe today for you to be successful. No, of course not. You could be successful, with a lot of different variations or versions of what I'm going to share with you. But the version I'm going to share with you today is pretty mainstream. It's pretty universal and agnostic to any individual industry. And I think it's powerful. Now, you could take it and tweak it and make it your own. Of course, you definitely want to do that. And you definitely want it to be in your own voice. But the basics that you're going to see here in a minute are really going to lay the foundation for your sales success in the average interaction. So let's jump right into what that looks like. A powerful strategic opening statement. Now, I like to keep things simple. I like to keep things very straightforward. And sometimes people do this naturally in the way they communicate. But the powerful strategic opening statement that I typically use is something like this. For me to be able to provide the best quality service that gives you the greatest benefit, I need to ask you some important questions. Would that be okay? Now, I know for a lot of people watching this, you may naturally say this in the way that you start any interaction. You may naturally do this, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people jump right in and they start, just asking questions, or they start telling people exactly specifically what it is they do or what it is that they offer. Please don't do that. But for the average person, they don't frame it the right way. And there is a particular strategy around why this approach is so powerful. And we're going to get to that at the tail end. We're going to get to that as we wrap up today. But this particular powerful strategic opening statement is powerful for a very specific reason. It lays out the path that you're going to take to get to the end result that they're looking for. Okay? For me to be able to provide the best quality service that gives you the greatest benefit, and obviously the goal is getting them the greatest benefit, I need to ask you some important questions. Important questions. I don't need to ask you some average questions or everyday run-of-the-mill, fill in the blank, check the box type questions. Important questions. Now, why is this so strategic? Why is this such an important and powerful opening statement? Because by asking this question at the beginning of your sales interaction, you set the foundation and the tone for what the rest of the interaction is going to look like. I'm looking to get you the greatest benefit. And to get there, I have to ask you important questions. And why do we want to use the word important questions? It's because every single question that we ask them is important, but it's the response that we're really looking for. And we're using the word important so they take the responses seriously, so they give us a bit more information, so they share with us some more. And would that be okay? Asking permission to move forward, gaining some agreement, gaining a minimal agreement or approval to move forward, a tactical yes to start the interaction. Now, If you're somebody that has communicated like this in the past or does today, congratulations. I think it's great. But I think it's really important that you understand the power behind this phraseology and why you want to stick with it, why it works. And it's going to make a lot of sense at the tail end when we tie it all together. But this opening is strategic and powerful all at the same time. For me to be able to provide the best quality service that gives you the greatest benefit, I need to ask you some important questions. Would that be okay? Now, for somebody who struggles with sales or is struggling with sales interactions or feels like they don't have control over the sales call or the sales appointment or interaction, this is a really important paragraph for you. Because what this does is this allows you to take control of the process and kind of take the flow into the interaction with you at the reins. It puts you in charge. Now, it's important that you don't give up the reins, that you don't give up the control over the sales call or the sales interaction, but you're going to find that you don't necessarily have to talk the most to control the sales interaction. In fact, believe it or not, it's the other way around. You should have that other person talking a lot more than you ever talk, but you can control the interaction by talking really, very little. You can actually control that process. And this statement opens that door. So that's the first step. Now, that step is critical, but we really gain traction and really dig into the power of this close in step 2. See, step 2 is what I like to call the meat of the process. And it's way too comprehensive to go through in its entirety in 1 hour-long session, but I am going to summarize it for you. I am going to give you the bullet points as to why this is important. And then we'll talk at the end about how you can accelerate understanding this a little bit better. But really, it's important as the second step is that you have to utilize the proper impact-focused questioning sequence designed to uncover the greatest identifiable impact and benefit for the prospect or client. Now, I know that's a pretty meaty sentence, right? The proper impact-focused questioning sequence designed to uncover the greatest identifiable impact and benefit for the prospect or client. What does that mean? We need to ask the right questions. We need to ask them the right way, and they need to be laser-focused and really focused on getting people talking, getting them to tell us what the impact is on them. Okay? And see, the power behind that approach, the power behind asking the right impact-focused questions in the right sequence really becomes evident as you move farther down the process. See, when you ask the right questions of people and you get them talking about what it is they're looking for, what it is they need, what their wants, desires, or aspirations are for themselves, their business, their goals, their employees, whatever it is that they're talking about, whatever is important to them. The more you get them talking about it, the more it becomes a reality in their subconscious mind. The more they want it to be true, the more it becomes real to them. And there you sit in front of them, asking those questions, uncovering those things, and listening intently as to what the meaning behind those things are. And again, the right questions, the right way, have to be delivered. They have to be delivered the right way. The key to understanding that really rests in the next sentence, which is proper questioning and positioning yourself as a trusted advisor sets the table for closing success, not only using this approach, but any approach. But the reason why these questions are so powerful and the reason why those impact-focused questions make all the difference in the world is when you deploy them the right way, when you lay them out the right way in your interaction with your prospects and your clients, whether you realize it or not, you are naturally and organically in the midst of the conversation starting to position yourself as a trusted advisor. Now, let's unpack that a little bit. Let's talk about why that is. Let's talk about the importance of that. And let's talk about how it relates to you getting them to take action at the tail end. Okay? The first thing you need to understand is the natural flow of that sales interaction is created by them opening up and sharing with you what means the most to them. And it doesn't matter whether it's a business issue, a personal issue, an employee issue, a financial issue, whatever the issue is, getting them to open up and talk about it is the first step. And that proper questioning and positioning really opens up them looking at you a different way. See, number one, not a lot of people go that far. Not a lot of people spend the time to ask those types of questions, number one. Not a lot of people spend the time to dig deep enough with those questions to get the true meaning or emotion behind the person and why they feel that way. That's the second reason. And the third is most people simply don't identify the right things to address or solve as it relates to the sale. And all of these things happen when you ask the right type questions and when you work with that person to hear their response and really understand their response. Now, we're not listening to just hear what they say. We're listening to understand the emotion behind why those things are important. And see, when you do those things, you immediately start to separate yourself from the average person, the average sales professional, your average competitor. You start stepping up into that trusted advisor status. And why is that? Well, the first reason is, number one, you cared enough to ask. You cared enough to ask them why this means so much to them, or ask the question in the first place and then dig a little bit deeper about why it means so much to them. You cared enough to ask. The average person doesn't do that. The average person stays really focused on just trying to uncover value and then showing a solution. And they don't get into the depths of the emotional reasons why somebody really wants that to happen, or why somebody really needs that to happen for themselves, for their business, for their family, for their finances, whatever it is. So when you ask the right questions in the right sequence, when you position those things the right way, you're going to find that you immediately start separating yourself as that trusted advisor. You start separating yourself from the pack. The other reason why this positions you as a trusted advisor is later on, you're going to have the opportunity to help them solve some of those issues. But you're going to come at it a different way. You're going to come at it in a way that's powerful. You're going to come at it in a way that makes them recognize that there's something special and different about you, something that separates you from other people. So whether you've known it or not, at this point in the process, if you've asked the right questions, if you positioned yourself that way, you've set the table for closing success. You've separated yourself from other people. A lot of people don't realize this, but studies have shown, in fact, I've gotten a lot of this from recent guests on the Impact Sales podcast. Studies have shown that as much as 67% of the sales professionals that are out there aren't memorable to the people that they're calling on or speaking to or working with. Imagine that 67% aren't memorable or aren't somebody that somebody can easily draw from their mind or memory. And the reason is the majority of those folks haven't positioned themselves as a trusted advisor. They haven't stepped into that rarefied air of asking those deeper questions. They haven't positioned themselves as somebody that's different than everybody else. And why is that such a big deal? Why is that a big deal as it relates to closing? Well, I'm going to tell you, it makes all the difference in the world. People want to work with people that they know, like, and trust. You all know that. You've all heard that. But what every person really wants is they really want a trusted advisor and confidant in every particular area that they can get one. They really want to know that they've got somebody in that field, in that industry, with that expertise that can help them when they need it. Now, sometimes those relationships can create just dynamic and amazing sales results for the person that positions themselves as the trusted advisor. Imagine this, and I had one of my clients share this with me. They really consider themselves as a trusted advisor in their industry. And the definition that they use is, when my client won't make a decision in this particular arena without reaching out to me and at least getting my input, I know I'm their trusted advisor. I know I'm that person. It's kind of like having a seat at the table. So imagine opening with a powerful and strategic opening statement like what I just gave you before. It's subdued, it's subtle, it's casual, it's comfortable. Anybody can deliver it, but it's powerful and it's strategic. And then following that up with the right impact-focused questions in the right sequence designed to help uncover clearly identifiable impact and benefit for your client. Imagine having that 1-2 punch at your disposal, being in a position to be able to not only set the stage the right way, but then just truly build the excitement in the prospect towards actually making a buying decision because you've now positioned yourself as somebody that's different and special. You've asked the questions that other people don't ask. You listened to understand, not just to hear. You weren't just checking the box like, I now know this. You really are listening and empathizing with what they're saying. You become that person that earns the right to be called their trusted advisor. Now, that can all happen, believe it or not, in minutes if you do it the right way. Sometimes it takes a little longer, but it can happen as fast as minutes. And the reason why this is so relevant and so important to your success is I want you to consider this particular approach really only has 3 basic steps. We've talked about the first, that powerful and strategic opening statement. We've talked about the second, which is utilizing the right impact-focused questions in the right sequence designed to identify their biggest impacts. Having those 2 things already working in your favor and then tying it all together with the fact that you now have positioned yourself as their trusted advisor makes all the difference in the world. Now, I'm not saying you have to be perfect at doing these things, but I'll tell you, if you can dial in these 3 steps, if you can really get laser focused on delivering these 3 steps really well, your closing percentages are going to go through the roof. You're going to close more business than you ever thought that you would. And you're going to do it in a way that doesn't feel uncomfortable to you or your prospect or client. You're going to do it in a way that's going to make you feel good. Now, what's the final piece in all of this? How do you tie it all together? Well, this is the best part. This is the part of this process that makes it so powerful. See, at the beginning, when we talk about that strategic and powerful opening statement, right? It's pretty laid back. It's subdued. You don't even realize what is being set up for later in the communication. It's so comfortable and casual to the sales professional as well as the prospect that you don't even realize how strong it is until you get to this point later in the interaction. And let's get there now. Let's talk about exactly what that looks like. Like with many things, and this is so important when we get into this third and final step. Like with many things, it's not just what you do, it's how you do it that determines the results that you generate. And that is very much the case with the questions that we described in the second step. And it's absolutely the case with the final step in this process. It's not just what you're doing that matters. And I want to be clear on that. I want to make sure that everybody understands the importance of that. It's not just what you're doing. It's how you do it. And we're going to talk about the how in a second, but the how you do it makes a huge difference in your success. The how is what really determines how comfortable people are. The how is what determines how confident you are in what you're doing. The how is what determines how easy the process is when you're doing it. You're going to find that you really getting your how dialed in makes a huge impact on your success. And let's talk about what that looks like. So, what I call number 3, the final step in this process, in the $200 million power close, is really clearly defining what I really call this close internally. I call it the $200 million power close because it's helped me generate over $200 million in sales transactions, across primarily the last 20 years or so. But it's important that you understand really what this close is. And this is why this works for the majority of people that use it. It's a powerful, strategic, and well-delivered closing statement. And I call it the sincerity and closing the loop technique. Sincerity and closing the loop. It's really straightforward. You're going to sincerely and with complete sincerity close the loop of what you started at the beginning of this process. You're going to do it in a way that's subtle but direct. You're going to do it in a way that makes people realize how different you are, that supports your status as a trusted advisor. You're going to do it in a way that helps you stand out from other people that use closing technique or tactic after the other, a whole list of them in their mind or on a sheet alongside them as they try to wrap up a deal. You're going to stand out because you're going to operate with complete sincerity and you're just going to close the loop. The sincerity and closing the loop technique. Now, what does that look like? Well, it looks like exactly what it sounds like, okay? It looks like you're going to go back sincerely to what you started with and close the loop. And here's what this would sound like. Now, again, you could take the wording, you could modify it, but I've highlighted a couple of key words in this to underline a couple of points, which I'm going to spend a few minutes doing. So here's what this sounds like. When we first started talking, I told you, if you answered my questions, I could do the best job for you and deliver the greatest benefit. Okay? That's a reminder of how we started. It's bringing them back to the way we started, reinforcing the powerful strategic opening. Here's where the strategy comes in. See, this is actually going to be how we're going to close the deal. This is going to be how we close up the process. Now, this next sentence, it's only 4 words, but it's probably one of the most powerful 4 words you're going to use during your interaction with them. And it's underlined there for a reason. And that sentence is this: I keep my commitments. Now, why is that powerful? Not only is it powerful because of the words themselves, but it's powerful because at this place in time, when you are reminding them that you started the process by asking them the permission to ask you questions because it was going to lead to the greatest benefit for them, they now have graciously answered your questions, shared with you those things, emotionally maybe dug into some things, provided some true depth behind what all of this meant to them. And now you're closing that loop. And you're closing that loop by saying, I keep my commitments. A reinforcement of the fact that you're there to honor them sharing the information that they shared, and you're on your way towards giving them the greatest benefit. I keep my commitments. You're going to keep the commitment of having the greatest value and benefit for them. You're going to keep the commitment of delivering them the maximum benefit for the work that you do together. You're setting the stage. You're also preparing them for what's going to happen in the second sentence after the first paragraph, but we're not quite there yet. Now, the next sentence is extremely powerful as well. And this is why the questions combined with this powerful approach have the result that they do and generate the results that they do. The next sentence is this: I know that I can deliver much of what you described means so much to you. Now, if you don't bother to ask the right type questions in the right sequence, if you're not uncovering impact, if you're not digging deep down to understand why those things mean the things that they do to them, well, this doesn't carry a lot of weight, does it? And that's why these steps are so important to do together. The steps are so powerful together. That second step of those questions makes all the difference in the world. It not only has positioned you as a trusted advisor, but now when you get to a point of trying to connect the dots and bring all this together for them, you need to have something to reference. You need to know why this means so much to them. Now, I don't just mean, because your product or your service or your offering provides a lot of value. That's rudimentary. That's the basic level. Of course, your product, your service, your offering better be valuable. There better be some value in it for them. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about impact. I'm talking about things that make them think deeply about what it would mean to them. Impact is something that creates a visceral, emotional response to something, good or bad. It impacts them positively. It impacts them negatively, or gives them a reaction, right? True impact. And that only comes from asking questions in a deeper way and listening to understand what really means the most to them. Now, that is such a powerful statement and powerful sentence that when you tie all this together and it flows, you will find that it becomes that much easier for people to be willing to let you help them. See, sometimes, and you know this, but sometimes people aren't quite ready to get the help that they need, or aren't quite ready to take the step that you're hoping that they're ready to take. And the only way that you're going to get them to take that step, the only way that you're going to get them to perhaps get out of their own way, as far as holding themselves back from addressing or changing or fixing whatever it is that's going on. Sometimes the only way to get them to get out of their own way is to dig deep emotionally and open that up for them, and then say, I'm here. I'm here to help you get what you're looking for. I'm here to deliver much, if not all, of what you described means so much to you. But that only has weight. That only is powerful. That only has the impact that you're looking for by way of closing the sale if you've asked the right questions. If you skip over that second step, if you jump ahead to try to close with the paragraph, if you just try to read this sentence and paragraph off and think you're going to close people without asking the right questions, it's not going to work. I know without a doubt that if you ask the right questions the right way, and then you open powerfully and strategically, and you close powerfully and strategically, that you will close the lion's share of the deals that you're in front of. But you have to deliver it the right way. How is every bit, if not more important than what you say. And the final sentence, and this is what puts it all together, this is where you're asking them to actually move forward. Would you let me help you with, insert whatever it is that means the most to them, or whatever it is you want to focus on, or deliver, again, insert whatever it is that they're looking for you. Would you let me help you with that? Would you let me help you deliver that, finalize that, fix that, correct that, enhance that, whatever word you want to include? Would you help me get that for you? And you're tapping into not what you do, but what they are looking for. Now, this is such a powerful statement because you really can tie direct to the emotion that they have. See, whether you knew it or not, there's a right way of closing these deals up, and there's a right time to close these deals up. And that time is when they are at the right emotional place to make a buying decision. It's what I call the impact phase. But sometimes people ask the right question at the wrong time, or they ask the right question the wrong way. And the way you avoid that is you make sure that you ask this question as close to that emotional stage that they were in, describing the impact. The closer that they are to that, the closer the proximity to those questions that they answered for you, the more likely that they will close. Now, before we get into wrapping this up and me explaining to you exactly how this should be delivered, because I put the words in front of you, but I haven't told you how it should be delivered. And I'll do that in a minute. Before we get into that, I want to explain one thing. I want to explain that the true power behind this particular closing technique is that in many cases, if not the majority of cases, the deal itself, the client themselves, the transaction itself really closed itself. And the reason is When you master that strategic and powerful opening statement and you master the right questioning pattern, the right questioning sequence, you're going to find that many of these deals close themselves. Many of these deals, the client will say, or the prospect will say, how do I get started with this? Or what are the terms and conditions? What does the agreement look like? True buying signs, or can you fix this for me? Can you do this for me? Can you give me this? Many of these transactions happen without you even having to ask yourself. So that second sentence that is here on the screen doesn't even become that necessary in some cases. And I wanted to make sure I covered that because it's one of the true underlying strengths behind this approach. It's so organic, it's so natural, it flows so nicely with the way you communicate through this process that many times the person closes themselves. Many times that person says, what do I need to do to move forward with this? Can you help me with this? But let's say, for conversation's sake, to wrap this up, let's say they don't say that and we have to deliver this powerfully ourselves. We have to deliver this. Well, what does that sound like? Let me give it to you differently. Let me describe and read it to you in a way that I would deliver it to a client, to a prospect, so you understand the differences in the how and why the how is so powerful. And it sounds something like this. When we started first talking, I told you that if you answered my questions, I could do the best job for you and deliver the greatest benefit. And I keep my commitments. I know that I can deliver much of what you described means so much to you. Would you let me help you insert whatever they want here or deliver, insert whatever they want for you? Would you let me help you with that? The how rests in the tone. The how rests in the sincerity. The how rests with you being sincere and closing the loop. We started this journey together. I want to close this together by bringing it together, giving you the benefit of this investment that you've given with me, the time, the answers to my questions, the emotional commitment by sharing that stuff. I'm delivering on my commitment by asking you if I can help you with this. I will tell you, after all the years that I've been in sales, I feel personally now that if I ask that question the right way at the opening, that I'm doing them a great disservice if I haven't asked them this way at the end of the transaction. If you are a newer salesperson and you feel you struggle with the close, I'm going to take the pressure off of you right now. I'm going to wash that pressure away. I'm going to take the bricks off your shoulder. I'm going to take all that pressure and make it go away. And I'm going to tell you this. If you go into these sales interactions sincerely and genuinely trying to help people, which I know you are, if you go into them that way and you ask that first question, the strategic and powerful opening statement, you ask that first question genuinely and sincerely looking to help them, then you have the obligation to ask them to move forward with you. You have the obligation to ask them to let you help them solve their problem or address their needs or deliver what it is that you can deliver to help address their concerns. You have the obligation. You have a defined obligation and responsibility to honor your word and follow through. So for everybody who struggles with, I'm uncomfortable closing. I struggle with closing. I don't like closing. I don't like closing techniques. Well, I just gave you the best way to never feel like that again. I just gave you the easiest way to make this part of your conversation and then to have you be responsible to ask for the business. Because if you don't ask, you're not honoring your commitment. You're not being sincere. You started the process by saying that if they answered your questions, you could deliver the greatest benefit. If you stop short and you don't ask them for the business, you're not honoring your word. You're not keeping your commitment. And that's why this close is so powerful. That's why this particular communication pattern is so impactful. It delivers so much for both sides of the transaction. It delivers so much for the prospect. They feel like somebody is listening to them and hearing them, and their trusted advisor is stepping out from the crowd and presenting themselves to them and showing them that this person cares about their business, them, and everything that means something to them. That's what it does for them. And then that person is asking for the right to help them solve the problems, the concerns, the needs that they have. It's powerful stuff. It's game-changing stuff. But it does a lot for the salesperson. And I'm not just talking about the transaction. It does a lot for the salesperson. I just said it takes the pressure off of the salesperson. It doesn't put them in a position that they need to worry about the close. They don't have to feel this anxiousness about the close. See, a lot of people go through this, just like clients go through this. As things get closer to the end, did you ever have this happen? As things get closer to the end of the interaction, you know somebody's going to have to press to close things up, right? Somebody's going to be asking for the business, and that can create some tension. That can create stress. It creates stress for the salesperson. It creates stress and anxiety sometimes for the prospect, for the client. But all of that goes away if you do what I've shared with you today. That pressure is not completely gone, but it is so diminished that it doesn't even seem like pressure. It just seems like I've got a responsibility that I need to follow through on. It's not stress. It's you being sincere in closing the loop. It's you being sincere and honoring your word. It's you being sincere and delivering what you said you were going to do at the start of the process. So it's not a close per se. It's not a way that you have to feel awkward or uncomfortable or stressful. So for all of you newer salespeople or people that struggle with anxiety related to the closing process, pay close attention to this. Go back and watch this recording again. Go back and really dig into the fact that you don't have to feel that way. You can leave all of that behind you. You can position yourself as a trusted advisor. You can follow these 3 steps. You can position yourself with sincerity and close the loop. And most importantly, you can know that you're having a major impact on the life and the business of the people that you work with. Now, that's some powerful stuff. That's some powerful stuff. But like I said in the previous slide, a lot of what you do is not going to make the difference. Sometimes it's in how you do it. You need to operate with complete sincerity. You need to be genuine. I'm not saying you ask these questions and aren't yourself, but you need to take a genuine interest in the responses. It needs to resonate with you. You need to listen to understand, because if you really want to position yourself with the highest likelihood for you to wrap that business up and win it, you want to deliver it, and the how makes all the difference in the world. And I'm going to reread this again one more time in the tone and the way that you should deliver it. And the wording can change. You can take the wording and change it a little bit for yourself if you'd like. Here's the one I like because it's straightforward. When we first started talking, I told you that if you answered my questions, I could do the best job for you and deliver the greatest benefit. And I keep my commitments. I know that I can deliver much of what you described means so much to you. Would you let me help you with that? Would you let me deliver that for you? Would you let me honor my word to you and make that happen? And see, when you ask that way, when you ask that on the heels of them sharing and describing and getting into the emotion behind why those things are important to them, your likelihood for success skyrockets. Your ability to close business skyrockets. It's like gasoline on the fire, steroids for your sales results. It will absolutely set you up for massive success. But like with anything, you have to practice it. You have to get good at it. You have to master it. Those 3 steps are not complicated, but there's nuances to them. There's things deep down in each one that you have to master if you want to be successful. And I know this worked. This is worked. This exact strategy has worked in more industries that I can even remember, but I know specifically 7 different verticals that this worked in powerfully. I guarantee you that if you do this the right way, it'll work in any industry vertical. It's all about how you position it, and it's all about how you approach your view of how you work with people. If you engage people sincerely with the intent of trying to deliver on everything that you're promising them, and you close the loop, this powerful close is yours for the taking. You could take it, work with it, make it your own a little bit, but it really comes down to how effective you are in each step of the process. Now, we've gone through a lot of stuff here today, and I know deep down as we go through things, there's always questions. There's things that people look at and wonder, how do I take this? How do I deploy it? How do I get it to the next level? Well, we're here to help. If you really want to accelerate this process, if you want to dial in these three things and dial them in a way that not only just gets you a little bit of success, I'm talking helping you crush your sales goals, get your closing percentages through the roof, and really position you as a trusted advisor, we would love to help. To accelerate your sales success, just text the word sales to the number 409-509-7355. You'll be able to access our digital assistant. You can connect with us, communicate with us. You can schedule a complimentary strategy session to talk about what's going on with sales in your business, and more importantly, how you can take these questions and maximize your sales results and close more business than you could ever possibly imagine. I know we covered a lot of great stuff today. So if we could be a resource to you in any way, don't hesitate to reach out just by texting the word sales to 409-509-7355. Or you can reach us on our website at www.thesalesactivist.com. You definitely don't want to go with questions unanswered. If we can help you in any way, it would certainly be our pleasure to do so. I want to thank everybody for joining us today for this Impact Sales Live as I figure out all the technology behind the scenes in our studio. I appreciate y'all taking the time. It's been my pleasure to be here going over the $200 million close, what I call my sincerity in closing the loop close. Don't miss the opportunity to go back and rewatch this. Check out our podcast, the Impact Sales Podcast, or reach out to us at The Sales Activist anytime if we can help. This is Joe Beck, and we'll talk to you soon.